بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم الحمد لله رب العالمين والصلاة والسلام على أشرف الأنبياء والمرسلين سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وصحبه أجمعين. Alhamdulillah, we begin by praising Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala for this opportunity for us to continue in our lessons in Mantiq from the Kitab of Sullam Munawraq by Al-Imam Abdul Rahman Al-Akhdari. And we pray to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala that Allah make this lesson a reason where our sins are forgiven, our prayers are answered, and may Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala protect us from all difficulties, trials and tribulations in dunya and akhirah. Ameen Ya Rabbal Alameen. So in our lesson in Mantiq, we have completed the first chapter in this knowledge, that is in the chapter of Tasawwurat. So from the beginning until last week, we have covered the principles of the chapter of Tasawwurat, and likewise we spoke about the objectives. So just I need to recap what are the principles and what are the objectives. The principles in the chapter of apprehension, that is Tasawwurat, is that we understand the five universal concepts. This is the foundations of this particular chapter. You need to understand the meaning of universality, and to understand about the five universal concepts, which is al-jins, wal-fasl, wal-am, wal-khas. So all and no. So these are the five universal concepts. So we have spoken about them in detail before we entered into the chapter of al-mu'arifat, that is the chapter of definitions, and we have mentioned the different types of definitions in our previous lessons, and what differentiate between a good definition and a weak definition. So we spoke about the three types of definitions. We have number one, definitions in Arabic, and we call it based on al-had. So al-had, it is a definition that comprises of two elements, that is al-jins wal-fasl, and this is the best form of definition. The best form of definition is when you have the genus and the difference, or the differentia. So even if you study Western philosophy and you study logic, for example, they will also mention the same thing. So they have their own types of definitions, and the best form of definitions is no doubt the definitions that is based on the genus and also the difference. So I gave examples, and the main examples I always give is al-insan huwa al-hayawanu natiq, and this is the definition of human beings. So the definition of human beings is that he is a hayawan natiq, a being that has intellect, an intellectual being, and if you translate into English, an intellectual being. So being is the genus, intellectual is the difference. So under the category of being, human beings share a common characteristics of being with animals. Animals are also considered to be being, and the difference between human beings and animals in terms of essence is the ability for human beings to think intellectually. This is the thing that is present in human beings that is not present in other beings. So we say this is the difference. So this is an example of the definition of al-had. And then we spoke about rasm. It is genus and khas. We use the genus and the same thing, but instead of using the difference, we use characteristics or an accident or an attribute of a particular thing that we are defining, a characteristic or an attribute that is specific to the thing that we are defining. So this is the meaning of al-khas, al-ardu al-khas. So we gave an example of al-insan huwa al-hayawanu dahik. So instead of saying insan is hayawan natiq, we say al-insan huwa hayawan al-dahik, because the attribute of laughing, of laughter, is present in human beings, and this is specific to human beings. But laughter is a type of accident. It is not any part of the essence of human beings. And we mentioned that when we speak about fossil, we are speaking about the essence, not an attribute. So we have to differentiate between what is an essence and what is an attribute. So our body is an essence, whereas our laughter is an accident. So it comes and goes, and human beings does not laugh at all time, but human beings has the capacity to laugh. So for example, now I am not laughing, but I have the ability to laugh. So this is an accident. It is not something that is part of the essence, but it is something that is performed by that particular thing that is described. So this is an accident. So if you define something with the genus and an accident that is specific to the thing that you are defining, this in Arabic term we call it a rasm. This is definition by a rasm. And then we have the third definition, that is the definition of lafzi. And definition of lafzi is basically using synonyms. There are certain things that have many words that carry the same meaning. So if a person asks, for example, what is the meaning of beauty? So we say the meaning of beauty, the definition of or the meaning of beauty is attractive. So we just replace a particular word that carry the same meaning based on the synonyms. So this is not a good type of definition, but it still gives meaning. It still gives any meaning. So we have the definitions based on had, based on rasm, based on lafzi, but the best is based on al-had. Then the author speaks about the conditions of the definition based on had. Before that also we spoke about al-haddu tam or haddu naqis. We spoke about rasmun tam, rasmun naqis, the complete definition and the incomplete definition of the had and of the rasm. When we use the far genus and the middle genus and the near genus. So the best type of definition is that we use the near genus and instead of the middle genus or the far genus. So instead of saying the definition of human beings is that human beings is a body that is intellectual. Now this is we are using a middle genus. So we say it is a being. So a being is what you call it below a body. All beings are a body. And on top in your body we have substance. So this is a far genus. So we have the far genus, we have the middle genus, we have the near genus. So in definitions always we have to stick to the near genus. And in the moment we go further than that, then it becomes al-haddu naqis. It becomes an incomplete definition, because we are generalizing too much. So many things and it can enter into it. Then the author spoke about the definition of the definition upon the conditions of the conditions of definition. That the conditions of definition that it must be al-jami' wal-mani'. Al-jami' it must encompass, and al-mani' it must not let others to enter. So it is encompassing and what you call it specific. Encompassing and specific. So for example, when we say al-insan wal-hayawanu natiq, al-hayawan it is jami'. It is a being that it comprises of many things. But the moment I use an-natiq, now it specifies. It specifies. So for example, if I say is a cow considered to be a human? So we say a cow, yes, a cow is a being, but it cannot be a human, because why? Because it does not qualify natiq. It does not qualify intellectual capacity. Any cow does not have intellectual capacity. So this type of definition is mani', meaning it does not make something that is not within its definition to enter into it. So we say that cows are not any humans, cats are not any humans, because it doesn't fit any the definition. It fit the definition of al-hayawaniya in terms of beings, yes, all of them are beings, but it does not fit the definition of natiqiyya, the definition of a natiq, that is a fossil. And so this the good definition, the conditions is that it must be jami' and it must be mani', and it must be free of metaphorical meanings if it cannot be easily understood without any evidence. So if a person any asks what is any the meaning any of an alim or knowledgeable person, so we say then a knowledgeable person yani is an ocean, full stop. Now this is a metaphorical meaning that does not have any evidence. Yani by saying an ocean full stop, people might be wondering what is the thing that this person is speaking about. People cannot understand. So but the moment you say for example, if a person say a knowledgeable person is an ocean then an ocean that things, an ocean that things, then people can understand that what is meant by the ocean here is the ocean of knowledge, that he possesses any knowledge as vast as the ocean. So this is an example of an evidence that brings it from the metaphorical meaning towards something that can be understood. So in definitions we do not use metaphorical meanings, because it's going to be difficult for people to make out what is the intended meaning. And likewise, it cannot have words that are not clear. It cannot be something that is too complex in a way that people cannot understand what is the thing that is defined. So these are some of the conditions that we spoke about last week, that it must not have metaphorical meanings. It must be clear, not something that is difficult to understand. And also we cannot be using or. We cannot be using or in definitions. And because by using or, it shows that you are in doubt. And it can be either this or this. This is not, or what you call it, a correct form of definition. So basically, understanding any definitions is the objective of the chapter of apprehension. These are the first part of Mantiq. The first part of Mantiq, that is about understanding tasawwurat. So the principles of this chapter is the 5 universal concepts, because you are in need of these concepts to construct good definitions based on al-had, that is tam. And likewise you need to understand the conditions of definitions. That definitions cannot be number 1, number 2, number 3, cannot have metaphorical meanings. It cannot be placed or what do you call it? It must be clear and not something that is difficult to understand. So and it must explain. It must explain jami' and mani'. It must be something that encompass and specific, so that any other things does not come into it. And at the same time also it cannot be a definition that does not give about benefit. That does not give about benefit. So for example, if a person asks what is the definition of knowledge, say knowledge is something that is known. Now this is circularity. This is not something that is of benefit, because you are just you going back to the same source. Knowledge and known, knowledge and known. Just in Arabic we say al-ilmu huwa ma'rifatul ma'lum. Al-ilmu huwa ma'rifatul ma'lum. This is not any good definition, because it is understood that al-ilm and ma'lum it comes from the same word. So you are basically using the same word to explain each other. So this is not a good definition. So a good definition it must be able to explain and clear, and it must be specific, and but yet other things that cannot come within that definition. It must be specific, and at the same time encompass all things that is within its definition. So these are some of the things that we mentioned in our last lesson. So this is important. Before we enter into the next part, the second part in Mantiq, that is learning about al-qadaya. Al-qadaya in English we translate as prepositions. So in order for us to understand any prepositions, we must understand about definitions, because words make up prepositions. Without words you are unable to have prepositions. So preposition basically meaning any sentences. So before you have a sentence, you need to have the elements within the sentence. So for example, in English we need to have the subject and predicate. That makes up the sentence. So for example, if I say Zaid is standing, Zaid is standing. So Zaid and is a subject, standing and is standing and is the predicate. So I am associating the act of standing and to Zaid. So this is the connection. This is the connection between the subject and the predicate. So all this is within still and within the understanding and Zaid, and is part of tasawwur. Understanding the predicate is also part of tasawwur. So we need to have any definition. We need to understand any definitions of each of these components. And then at the same time also, now we are associating the act of standing to Zaid. So this is also any part of apprehension, part of tasawwur. But when we speak about tasdeeq, whether this statement is true or false, this is another thing. This is where we are getting into. Once we have understood any definitions of all things, of all the things that we are going to speak about, then we construct them into proper sentences, and then we are able to make out the truth of the statement, whether it is something that is true or it is something that is false. So this is going to be in the chapter of Al-Qadaya. So now, inshallah ta'ala, we will enter into the notes for a while. Then I will give some examples, inshallah ta'ala. This is what basically what we mentioned in our last lesson. These are some of the conditions that is mentioned by the author. So the author is saying, "Wala yajuzu fil hudud dhikru aw." It is not any permissible in definitions based on hudud. And hudud here goes back into al-had. Definition based on al-had. So al-had we mentioned goes back into al-had, and it goes back into genus and difference or differential. So it is not permissible for us to use the word or. Waja'izun fi rasmi fadri ma rawaw. But when it comes to definition based on rasm, it is permissible. It is permissible because the definition based on rasm, it uses the accident that is specific to the thing that is defined. So, and these accidents there are many. There are many. For example, we can say al-insan wal hayawan ad-dahik. Insan is the being that, what you call it, has laughter. Or we can say al-insan wal hayawan al-insan, we have for example al-insan wa hayawan al-mashi. Al-insan huwa hayawan al-jari. Al-jari. Yani insan is the being that has the ability to walk, or the ability to run. So this is also an accident. Type now we enter into the next part. So all this I mentioned earlier. Okay. Now we look at our notes. So this is the chapter that we are entering. So the author mentioned babun fil qadaya wa ahkamiha. The chapter of al-qadaya. So the word qadaya in the Arabic language, it is the plural of qadiyya. So in English it is translated as prepositions. So basically the meaning of qadiyya, it is a sentence. A sentence that carries either truth or falsehood. So just now I gave an example. For example, Zaid is standing. Somebody comes to you and said Zaid is standing. So if you do not see Zaid, for example, you do not see him, Zaid may be somewhere else. So a person when he comes and say that Zaid and he is standing. So there is a possibility that this statement and is true, and there is a possibility that this statement and is false. So we say this is any propositions. This is any consider any to be a proposition. So it is any statement that is either true or false. Any it is either any true or false. So it consists any of basically the subject and the predicate. So in order for us any to understand in these propositions, so we have any to understand all the two components. That is any the subject and the predicate. So this is where we are in need any of the first chapter. That is any to understand definition. So once any we understand definition, and then any we understand the association any of these two elements, then we are able any to understand the statement. Then only any we look out for evidence to prove that this statement any is true or false. So this is basically any the chapter any of Al-Qadaya. So let me just Emma, you go on. So the author and he mentioned the definition here. He said, "Mahtamala sidqa li dhatihi, jara bainahumu qadiyatan wa khabara." So something any that can accept truth or falsehood. So this is the meaning of qadiyya. Or in other words, any he said, it can be also mentioned any as khabar. So just like any in balagha, for example, any we mentioned any that sentences any divided any into two categories. Any we have khabar and insha. Khabar and insha. So for example, if you have a sentence that is not any in the command form, any we say this is any a sentence any based on khabar. So it is a sentence any that has, for example, subject and predicate, and a simple any sentence. This is any considered any to be khabar. But the moment any you command any someone, it is insha. So in the knowledge any of Mantiq, we are only concerned any about khabar. We are not any really that concerned any about any insha. So because any of time, I do not any have the time, because any time of Isha has come in. So inshallah, I thought anyone to give any some examples, but inshallah any we postpone any to next week. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala bless us any with tawfiq. So inshallah in next week we speak more any about this particular chapter. Sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammadin wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam.